Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Cody Kinsey. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have my favorite Wi-Fi hacking chicken, Stefan, on to join us today. Stefan, thanks for joining us.
I love that introduction. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we've been working pretty hard the last week on our presentation for Black Hat, and for those who don't know about this, Stefan, you want to explain a little bit about what we're doing?
So we are going to show off how do I describe this? Like a scenario where you hack into a network by basically social engineering or phishing the password. So we don't actually crack the Wi-Fi password. We serve a fake access point or a rogue access point, and the user gets disconnected from their original one, connects to our fake access point, enters the password. We now are able to log into the network, and then you are showing off how to get access to a FTP server and ransomware the files on it. It's all like a 15-minute thing, but a pretty crazy scenario.
Yeah, so in about 15 minutes, we go from completely outside of a Wi-Fi network, which has a network attached storage or an FTP or something connected via Ethernet. So it's not even available to us to attack over Wi-Fi. In 15 minutes, we can go into the network by phishing an employee, look around, find that valuable thing, and then ransomware it. So it's a really cool demonstration if you guys want to check it out at Black Hat. We'll put more information up soon. But we can talk a little bit about what we've developed for this. And one of those things is, let me see if I can find it, the phishing page. So I posted a tweet about this earlier this week, and I was just kind of asking people, imagine you lost internet connection and this popped up on your Wi-Fi connected devices. Would you enter the password? And this is currently what it looks like. So in addition to this, if you type in, just whatever password, it redirects you to a screen that says that if you got the password wrong, you're basically not going to get your internet access back, and you need to go back and check the password to make sure your internet access is restored. So if you were just in the middle of a Zoom meeting or like otherwise doing some sort of work online, and then suddenly just were cut off from the internet and this popped up on your device, would you assume that it was assuming you had a Netgear router, would you assume that it was just undergoing a critical security update like it says? Or would you assume that something else was going on? So there's a couple of caveats here. One of them is, in order to make this pop up on someone's device, I can either force their device to connect to some random network they've connected to in the past, like a hotel network or a coffee shop network, by first broadcasting a whole big long list of open Wi-Fi networks, finding out which ones their phone has joined in the past, and then abruptly causing this to pop up by switching their Wi-Fi connection. So before they even realized it, this would just pop up, and they actually would probably barely experience an interruption service before this was just up on their phone, telling them that they needed to update their router. The other way of going about this is to create a second Wi-Fi network with the exact same name as the targeted network. And you would just make it have no password. So as soon as you kick the person off of the Wi-Fi network they were relying on, you would assume that they would scan the Wi-Fi area, see that there was another wireless network there with the exact same name, and then click on it, wondering what was going on with the router. And as soon as they clicked on it, then it would pop this up. So there's two different ways you could potentially get a Wi-Fi phishing victim to encounter this phishing page. But as soon as they type in the password, then it would send the network password directly to the attacker using something really low cost like the Andromeda Deauthor here, or even just a little D1 Mini. So this attack is pretty sophisticated, and the fact that we can go from scanning on the outside of a network to identifying an individual employee on a targeted network that we want to go after with this attack, there really are not that many steps to making this work. And that's why I think this is a really cool and powerful demonstration for anyone who wants to see how this sort of network intrusion might work. So Stefan, is there any way we might be able to see the phishing page, or do you want to talk about how you made it? Because as far as I know, I don't know of any other Wi-Fi phishing attack tool that's based on the ESP8266. So I think this might be the first one.
Yeah, and so right now this is implemented in the Deauthor v3. So if you have the old version, that's not possible right now to use this feature, but it's only in the v3 and it's very limited currently. And while preparing for this Black Hat project, I immediately noticed that there are some problems developing this. For example, when you deauthor a target and serve an access point on different channels, the performance will be really bad and you might not be able to get this pop-up open on the target. So you have to do some tweaks, maybe send fewer packets, set it to the right channel. And then also you can't really serve a very sophisticated page either. Because right now this is all hard coded, and there are basically just 2 pages hard coded into this right now. The login page that you have a screenshot open right now, and then there is a second page that says update in process. That's pretty much it.
One.
That's the mean one, because it says that it's updating, and if it's not finished in 60 seconds, you should just go back and type in the password again.
Yeah, that little bit of social engineering is great because effectively the follow-up page says, if your internet connection is not restored in 60 seconds, go back and try the password again. But for the hacker, that just means they have 60 seconds to try the password you just gave them to try to break into the network. And if it works, they'll just stop the attack and your internet connection will instantly be restored. But if they, if they find out the password doesn't work, then instead they can continue the attack indefinitely and just not let you connect to the Wi-Fi network. Now, of course, there are a couple of caveats on this. One of them, of course, which someone might ask is 5 gigahertz. This currently doesn't support 5 gigahertz attacks because, the ESP8266 doesn't support that as a frequency it can work with. But somebody in the chat just says, if you don't know what you're doing, anyone could fall for this. I fell for a very, very similar attack back when I worked at a startup. We were working in a mixed-use office/apartment building, and at some point, my internet connection cut off. I got this page that popped up that said a security update was in place. It was for the manufacturer of the router we had, and I was like, "Whoa, okay." And I typed it in, and then the internet started working again. And I didn't really think anything of it, other than I was like, well, that's weird. I've never had like an update that required me to type in the network password. Like, it's a little strange. But like, I didn't really think anything of it until I discovered that was the functionality of another like Wi-Fi hacking tool. And I was just like, damn it. Like, okay, like we definitely gave somebody access to our network. And in that case, fortunately, like I think they just wanted free Wi-Fi because they just moved into the building. But it was a pretty sophisticated attack, and it was remarkable that it didn't seem that weird when it was happening to you. It was just frustrating and annoying for a little bit, but then, it gives you a perfectly plausible scenario for why it's happening. So yeah, this is something I'm definitely looking forward to exploring a little bit more. As Stefan mentioned, this is currently hard-coded, so it's currently not possible to adjust this phishing page to, be specific to the router that you are attacking. But in the future, like that's something that I've been asking Stefan about. And also there's currently the ability to detect the manufacturer of most wireless devices that Stefan has built into this new V3. So of the Deauthor firmware. So the ability to like detect what type of manufacturer a particular device is already exists within this tool, and taking it the next step further and maybe making a custom phishing page based on that, who knows, could be possible in the future. Maybe you guys should suggest it if you really want it. And Stefan and I have also talked about things like maybe adding an SD card. So if you like load up a phishing website on an SD card and put it into one of these devices, then you would be able to serve that up. There's lots of different ways you could go about doing this, and because this is an open source project, there's lots of different ways you could go about doing it. So maybe take a stab at it yourself if you have the skills necessary to do so. But right now this is an early feature that I think really broadens the range of what this tool can do, because now you don't need to rely on a second computer that's going to be trying to crack Wi-Fi passwords. This can actually go out and try to get the Wi-Fi password via social engineering right now. Although I do have some suggestions for future versions of this, like the ability to differentiate between data packets and like maintenance packets, or what are they?
Management frames.
Management frames, yeah. Just being that you would be able to tell phishing targets, people that were actively using data right now, which would make it a lot easier to make sure you weren't attacking like a smart candle or something by accident. Like if it just had like a weird manufacturer name, you're like, and it's like the only thing on the network, and you keep trying to like trick it, but it's just like an IoT device. Like that would be very silly and annoying to have that happen. So yeah. we're really excited about this. If you want to check out more, again, you'll be able to see the presentation of Black Hat, and I'm sure we'll do some more kind of features on the various stuff we're adding to this platform on the Security Forward channel, which is why we love having you guys here. So yeah, if you currently, Stefan, are we testing this now? Can people test this out if they have the V3?
They can, not with the interface we have used for the presentation, because I haven't published this. I have to do some changes because, for example, I don't want the Netgear logo in the source code. That could get me into some trademark problems. But yeah, no, the screenshot you showed, that's what I want to push into the source code very soon. And but there is currently already a version that's working. It's just not as good looking.
Yeah. So, yeah, someone just said, person walks by the candle turning itself on and off. What's wrong with my candle? Yeah, that could be the attack that you're running, is like, you just have someone who's just like, well, I don't use any Wi-Fi devices except this candle. Man, that thing is unreliable. And you would never get the Wi-Fi password this way. But yeah, I think if you guys want to try this out, you can see the basic functionality by downloading the V3 of the Deauthor. I kind of want to show how to do that, but hold on, let me actually pull it up first, because the first thing that came up was a bunch of like laser pointer enabled hardware devices. All right, here we go. Let's switch to my screen. So all right, do you guys want to try out this project? It's pretty cool. If you happen to have a ESP8266, or if you want to do long range, more advanced stuff, Andromeda Deauthor, which you can pick up on Spacehoon's store, which is spacehoon.store, or hack.gay if you're in the United States, then you can go ahead and go to github.com/spacetoon/ESP8266_Deauthor. Really easy to remember.
I think deauthor.com should also work.
Oh yeah, deauthor.com. That's great. So deauthor.com, you can go here and you can use the regular old version 2, which is really cool. It has a web interface, blah, blah, blah. But instead, if you want to be on the up and up and try out all the cool new stuff that Stefan and I have been working on while depressed in the pandemic, you got to go to the V3 branch. So here you can see branches, go to V3. And this is the version that we have been putting the most development work into. It has a new powerful command line interface. It's soon to have a browser interface, but it currently uses the Hunitor or any serial monitor. I think that there's some people using like Arduino serial monitor to access this. That's fine. You can do it if you want to. And the installation on this is really straightforward. If you have the ESP tool, which is actually what Arduino IDE uses to flash images over to the ESP8266 itself, you can just run this to the command line and just flash over the nightly release. So if you go here and then look at the V3 nightly build, this will be the most recent, the most up-to-date build of this tool. So again, the V3, this is the V2, but that's the V3. So download that and then follow the instructions here for just flashing this over. And you should have an ESP8266 now running the most up-to-date version of this awesome Wi-Fi attack tool. So you can try out some of the Wi-Fi phishing stuff. You can try out some of the scripting that we demonstrate in our video at Black Hat. Yeah, it's really cool because I think Stefan was able to disconnect someone from a targeted Wi-Fi network and then pop up a fake version of that Wi-Fi network in like one line. Of course, it was like 2 commands like stitched together, but this does allow you to make really short, really easy to remember or save commands that will do some more sophisticated Wi-Fi attacks than just like kicking someone off a network. So.
Yeah, and you can also subscribe to me on YouTube. That's also Spacehoon. Because I think I will be doing a proper tutorial video on how to install the V3 Deauthor very soon. I've already started making a few tutorial videos on how to use it. I think the Hunitor installation tutorial and the scan command videos are already online, and there are more to come.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so definitely check out Stefan's YouTube channel. Wait, what's the best way to get there? Just
youtube.com/spacehoon.
Okay, cool. And probably your personal website has a link too, right?
Yeah, if you go to spacehoon.com, there's also a YouTube link on the homepage.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. So if you guys want to follow up on this project, I think that, again, Stefan and I work on this a lot, and you will see a lot of updates. You can go here to YouTube and follow him as well. But yeah, so if you guys have any thoughts about the upcoming features, if you have any non-ridiculous or super illegal suggestions for things we should include, because keep in mind, like, we want to make this a tool that's possible to expand our knowledge of how Wi-Fi works, legitimately audit systems that are using Wi-Fi, and be able to identify any weaknesses, especially ones that can be exploited in such a small, inexpensive device. But we can't do like full on like attacks like that are highly targeted, or like deauth absolutely everything in an area. That just makes this tool like really vulnerable to being like banned or regulated or otherwise like made unavailable. So don't ruin it for everyone, but do suggest ideas for sneaky Wi-Fi attacks or exploitations that we might be able to include in this, provided they're not just purely malicious. So yeah. Thank you, Stefan. I'm really looking forward to how this, to seeing how this comes out. This is something that you showed me, actually. I was on a trip with a bunch of people who had iPhones, and I immediately activated this SSID as soon as you showed me. So if you were not aware, earlier this week, was it this week? Oh my gosh, it was this week.
I think it was last weekend, so just after we did the last live stream.
Yeah. It was discovered that there was a Wi-Fi network SSID, or network name, that permanently disables the Wi-Fi functionality on an iPhone until you completely reset the network settings, which is kind of a pain. So this is just happens to be the way that it parses or saves it, makes it unable to work. And one thing to note is this is not all Apple devices. This is iOS devices, because I think, Stefan, you tested this, right?
Yes, so I will have this featured in an upcoming Deauthor v3 tutorial video. So if you're curious, because I show you the command and how to use the beacon command, and I showed in the end of that tutorial this very attack, because it just came out when I was recording that video, and I showed it on my iPad, which uses iPadOS. And I had different results. I ran this attack 3 times for the video, and every time I had a different result. At some point, or at first, it would be stuck in a loop connecting to that fake network, and it wouldn't let me do anything else. Like or at least not connect to any other network. Even after disabling Wi-Fi, turning it back on, it would still say that it's connecting to this weird SSID, and I was unable to get internet access, basically. Then at some point randomly it stopped doing that, and then I ran the attack again, and it was loading again and again and again, but after disconnecting the Wi-Fi, then suddenly it worked again, but then it was unable to see the fake SSID. It just vanished, even though it was still there, and I can see it on other devices. The iPad would just not see the SSID anymore. So weird things happening. And what I also said in the video is you can probably try this on other devices, or similar weird SSIDs, because Android phones will probably have similar issues, especially because the Android market is so segmented, and you have so many different manufacturers and Wi-Fi chips and implementations of the Wi-Fi stack. There are probably tons of SSIDs that will create problems for certain devices. Now that I say this, actually, I remember the first time I was on C3, we were sending this like shrug ASCII thing, like a bunch of SSIDs with that symbol in it. And people came to our table because their phones wouldn't work. This had some special characters, like special UTF-8, whatever characters in it, and apparently some older phones have problem with that. So when they went into the Wi-Fi menu,
it would just
their
crash
phone
it?
froze. Yeah.
That's amazing. So so one limitation on this also is someone actually has to type, or not type, someone has to like tap on this and join the network. So it's not just seeing the SSID that causes it to crash. Unfortunately, like what you were talking about, this is something where they actually do have to join it. So immediately the first thing I did when I learned about this was try to print out QR code stickers that said free Wi-Fi, and then just automatically connect you to this network without letting you see what it actually is. The primary problem here is abstraction. You have to try to hide it. But if people thought they were going to get free Wi-Fi for just joining a Wi-Fi network, most might not realize that it was actually going to seriously mess up the internet on their Android phone, or sorry, their iPhone, for a good amount of time, especially if they're then not able to figure out like how to fix the problem. So yeah, if anybody manages to make that work, please let me know. I haven't confirmed that it has worked, but I have tried it, and unfortunately my Android device is not vulnerable. It does not care. It will just join this network. It thinks it's cool. But I think that you might not even have to have the access point existing if you wanted to put this on a QR code, because as soon as this is added to the network list, it's going to cause all the problems that having it really be there. So if you don't even want to create this network, I'm pretty sure you could just print this on a piece of paper, and if anybody scanned it and connected to the network, then yeah, they would have this issue, which I think is very, very funny. So
I think NFC also works, and I'm not sure how that works, but maybe I've never used NFC. Can you put it on a tag and just like go to other people's iPhones and like bloop and it scans it?
I don't have an iPhone, but I imagine like there's some sort of like network sharing functionality that could be abused on this besides just QR codes. I just love like taking something dumb like this and trying to weaponize it even further to be more annoying.
Crazy. Yeah, this is a fun bug. I mean, it's not super dangerous or anything. If your menu is bugged, then you have to reset the network settings, but that's pretty much it. There could be worse problems with that. And as you said, you have to connect to the SSID, so just seeing it won't create the problem. So yeah, not too big of an issue, but it's a fun bug, to be honest, and it's super cool because this is a great example of showcasing like beacon attacks, and how they can be abused, or you can do fun things with them.
I'm gonna switch back to the chat for a second. But yeah, I was going to say beacon attacks are really novel and interesting because I was reading up on some of the things that Matthew Van Hoff has been looking at to supplement or otherwise replace deauthentication attacks, which are really easily detected. And Stefan and I were talking about in the future possibly implementing beacon attacks that can disable someone's internet connection by basically lying to a client device and saying, hey, the internet connection is so slow that you basically can't say anything. And like basically throttling or otherwise disabling people's connections by sending them a beacon frame, something that basically is explaining how the network works to a client, but filling in variables to make it so that the client is never going to be able to have a viable data connection. And these sorts of attacks are really sneaky because like you're probably looking for deauthentication frames, you're probably looking for other things that are much more suspicious than beacon frames. So in the future, look out for other attacks that are based on beacons which advertise false information, because just like this attack is advertising a malicious SSID, there's other variables within the beacon frame that we can change to be malicious that can cause unwanted or pretty devastating effects on a network when targeted correctly. So I didn't even know this. I thought the beacon frames were pretty innocent, but it turns out they can actually be used for attacks kind of in a similar way to the way that deauthentication frames are used. Well, at least in the current version of WPA2. So that's pretty crazy. I did not know that. But you guys should maybe take a look at some of Matthew Van Hoff's more recent papers on Wi-Fi attacks with beacons if you want to dig into that further, because I'm still absolutely fascinated by it. Yes. Is it possible to scan a network remotely? Yes, it is. It is possible to scan a network remotely using this tool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and go... all right, let's talk about some more news. So when exploits get old, like let's say that you have something that allows you to like exploit an older version of a iPhone or an older version of an Android device. When these exploits get old, they kind of tend to lose their value and get sold onto the secondary gray market, which is often used to go after people that are in other countries that maybe are lawyers or journalists or other people that the government doesn't like. And there is a real problem with people who sell surveillance technology that's based on these exploits, or just, you know, straight up regular surveillance technology that filters internet traffic in order to spy on people, to regimes that have really terrible human rights records. So for I don't know of many other cases of this. I don't know if it's the first time, but finally some of these companies are being held accountable for what happens when their technology is used in these countries where, I mean, it's very, very likely it's going to be used to target the people these regimes have already been targeting. And then in many cases, it actually does happen and real people are tortured, killed, or otherwise have horrible things happen to them. So selling surveillance technology to countries that immediately use them to go after journalists, dissidents, or other people they don't agree with is finally seeming to have some legal ramifications for the companies that sell this stuff. But in some of these cases, like there was a French company that was selling some of these products. The French government neither approved nor disapproved of the sale, and that's why it went forward, is because like there was no procedure in place to basically explicitly disapprove of this sort of thing. And so the government kind of like through inaction signed off on the sale that ended up having some pretty horrific consequences. So if you've ever been curious about the damage that some of these technologies can do that we take for granted in our own countries when they're introduced into countries where maybe someone's abusing them in order to get at certain people who are vulnerable, then this is a really good story, because a lot of these technology companies make money from these sorts of proceeds, but they don't really stay connected to the results of what happens when they sell this technology. So just a reminder that, you know, there are consequences for selling surveillance technology to countries with appalling human rights records. And this is kind of some of the best reporting I've seen so far on, you know, what happens to the companies that turn a blind eye to this. So don't sell spyware to, repressive regimes, seems to be the message there. Okay, this is just like for the people in the United States. I've seen a lot of people getting this confused between HIPAA versus HIPPO. So let's just get through this really quickly, because people in the information security community have no excuse to get this wrong. So HIPAA is what people often are trying to like yell about when they're just like, oh, medical files are exposed here. You're not properly storing medical files. And this actually has to deal with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And that's where if you are a medical provider, there are certain requirements for how you store and keep data. And this is a real law. This is actually something that is real. HIPAA, HIPPA, is the Health and Information Privacy Protection Act, and it is not real. This was made up by people in the pandemic that did not want to wear masks and got angry when people were asking if they had a specific medical condition that prevented this. This is not a real law. This is not how it's spelled. And for whatever reason, people who believe in this fake law seem to think that it applies to everyone. So if you have ever yelled at someone who is not a healthcare worker about like mismanaging like some piece of your data and thought that HIPAA was the applicable thing to be shouting out about, you are almost definitely wrong. I have been wrong a couple times while auditing businesses that process or otherwise receive some sort of healthcare data but are not themselves healthcare workers or like a healthcare agency, and found out the weird line between this. So finally, we have the hippo. This is an animal which you should not get into the water with and could kill you. I really hope that you guys can at least differentiate the last one, if not the first two. But just if you're an InfoSec person, you're talking about stuff in the United States, you're talking about healthcare data, please just take a second to realize it's not really spelled how you think it's spelled, and it doesn't apply necessarily to the people you think it applies to. This is just a good refresher, because I've embarrassed myself before, and I'm sure many other people will. But yeah, again, at least the last one. And now for a complete retooling of all of my OSINT stuff. John McAfee was found dead in a prison cell. I found this out, of course, because our editor, Eric, who is obsessed with John, texted me literally moments after it happened and a good like half hour before I saw it appear on the rest of the news. This is devastating to me personally, because he is the only man on the planet that I have been, without any restrictions whatsoever, allowed to use every single OSINT gathering tool I can possibly find on, because the man would leak a tremendous amount of incriminating data. And also just nobody seemed to care, because he didn't seem to care either about digging up his information and organizing it into investigations. I don't know of anyone who could fill the big suspicious shoes that John McAfee has left me to fill. I don't know who is going to take the place as the centerpiece of all of my OSINT investigations. I have done more articles chronicling like what this man is up to than I think any other person in any example of OSINT, except maybe like Theranos, like is creeping up there pretty close. And after I was told to stop targeting Priceline.com, I really settled on John McAfee for a really long time. So it's going to be hard to move on and find, you know, someone else to use the OSINT tools to dig up what island he's on, what types of guns he has on his boat. You know, like all this stuff was just a really interesting and engaging way of showing journalists like, hey, people do put out incriminating information about themselves on social media. See, with a single flag, you can see all of John McAfee's arsenal and figure out what country he's in now. That ride has now come to an end. And while I cannot in any way condone almost any of his behavior, I will say the man lived an interesting life and was certainly probably the easiest subject I've ever tracked using OSINT tools. So dang. Sorry. Not many people deserve to die in jail. So that is a terrible, terrible thing. But personally, it's going to take me a long time to find someone to replace the specific role he had in my professional life. So very fair. Just Stefan, I know you had a lot of thoughts about this as well. Please don't let me take up all the time.
Yeah, there's no one like John McAfee. Like who even comes close to that craziness yet has the name of an antivirus.
That's what I'm like. Are they gonna rebrand ever? Are they ever gonna have they just like absolutely just stuck with it and they're just like, you know what? No matter what happens, yes, we're gonna go with it. I don't know, but man, what a legacy. There is gonna be a lot of movies and made-for-TV dramas about this.
I can't wait for them because that's the story of this man's life is just insane, and it's kind of sad that we can't follow it any longer.
Yes, I agree. So, all right, hey, want to bug your computer even more? Guess what? GUIdra 10.0 has been set loose, and now it has an integrated debugger. So I know that our friend Malware Tech has been doing his own getting started with reverse engineering series. And if you guys want to check that out, I really like what Marcus has been doing with this. I will find a link later. But yeah, so if you have never used GUIdra before and you want to try it out, I can't tell you how to do it, but I believe Marcus can, because that's currently what he's doing on YouTube. So if you want to check out Malware Tech's guides on getting started with reverse engineering, I watch a couple of them. I really like them. It's surprisingly not straightforward at first, but then once he gets into it, it really starts making a lot more sense. So yeah, it's cool to see these tools be released to the public. You think there's an exploit, Stefan?
There's an exploit in what?
In GUIdra.
Because it's from the NSA?
Of course, because it's from the NSA.
I don't think the public version has that. But I could see them specifically serving manipulated versions to certain people.
Yeah, I was going to say,
specific channels.
Do you know how sneaky we are? We love being sneaky. It's like a missed opportunity to be sneaky is like a big deal. So, you know, who knows? I'm not going to say yes or no, but yes. All right, so...
It wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah. So have you heard of an app called Premise?
No.
Okay, so this is not a story I still know a ton about because I'm so creeped out by it, I've been frankly avoiding it. But a long time ago, I was like, hey, like a smartphone has a lot of sensors, and some of these sensors are very useful for particular things, like identifying if a particular person is at a particular place, like having access to someone's camera, wireless sensors, or some of the other sensors embedded in any modern smartphone could be really useful for intelligence gathering. I mean, war driving is a really good example of this, and I think the creep detector, which we worked on with Alex Lin, was also a good example of how you could use like just wireless data to figure out if someone's following you or figure out if a certain person was in a certain place. Somebody else thought that that was also a good idea and decided to make an app where, unfortunately, like clients like the US military have just been tapping people to use the sensors on their phone for basically surveillance. So surveilling a certain place that they don't have eyes on, turning on their wireless card and recording information in an area where they might want to know all the access points or all the hardware that's running. These sorts of like kind of creepy distributed spying tasks are like kind of like if TaskRabbit was for like intelligence gathering. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that are participating in this have no idea that they're working for clients like the US military. So what do you think, Stefan? People just walking around your town could just be snapping pictures and uploading it to the US military for just like intelligence. Is that good? Or should they have to put their own spies in and do it the old-fashioned way?
On one side it's fascinating because it's so smart and so up to date, like in the mindset of the current technology we have. On the other side, it's super creepy.
Yeah.
But I'm still a bit confused. So what is this app? Like, are people installing this app for what? Or is this just, for people that want to be spies?
No, this is people who want to carry out tasks for money. So it's never
okay.
explicitly stated like, hey, do you want to work for the U.S. government spying on your country? It'll be like, hey, we're doing a road traffic study. Can you record a high definition video driving slowly down this road? And then they're just like, thanks so much for all the license plates of all the vehicles parked on the street currently. So we can send somebody else to do it the next day and get an accurate picture of who works where, who lives where, based on which vehicles are, parked in a specific spot. Like optical character recognition makes license plate recognition easy, meaning you can use this as an automated effectively like a mobile automated license plate scanner to find out where vehicles or people are. You can use, right? Like you can use war driving functionality to find out where access points or other devices are. Like, it really gets creepy.
This is so cyberpunk.
Bluetooth.
Cyberpunk is now.
Bluetooth as well. If you have like a car stereo or a pair of headphones or something else that doesn't change its Bluetooth MAC address, you can have somebody be Bluetooth war driving and basically reveal the location of maybe a particular person's device. So you could basically create a distributed sensor net through all these people to locate an individual in a city based on an electronic device that that they own, or maybe that you sent them. Sucks, huh?
Yeah.
Any random person insane. Trying to make like $20 on a task sent by some anonymous company, could actually just be spying on the person next door. Creepy. All right, well that's depressing. Anyway, moving on. Let's talk about exploiting custom protocol handlers for cross-browser tracking in Tor. Do you know what that means, Stefan?
So
it's a mouthful. I feel like I'm like giving a command in Star Trek, but no. So basically, this is talking about scheme flooding, and this vulnerability means that if you have like a website or something that is malicious, and you're trying to determine who is connecting to it, even if they're using Tor, you can basically flood them with a bunch of different like domain schemes. And what this does is, if you have any of these installed apps on your system, Python IDE, Postgres, it'll return a custom response. So there's a difference between like not having the app installed and having the app installed, and attempting to request that scheme is what can tell the website whether or not you have it. And that can be enough information to build a fingerprint about you. So even if you're using Tor, it looks like it's still able to be specific enough to fingerprint you just based on the specific things you have installed on your computer. And again, something like a Python IDE is not something you would typically think about, being able to leak information about you. Like here's the feature demonstrated using the Skype // and that, if you have Skype on your computer, will launch a confirmation dialog and ask if you want to launch it. But you can abuse this feature to just spam a whole bunch of them, and that means that you can, here's Slack as an example. That means that you can use that to identify the person, even if they're using other methods of obfuscation, and that's pretty creepy. And it looks like it works on a number of different browsers. So if you haven't heard about this, then really interesting way of being able to peel back some of the anonymity that Tor affords you. So some limitations. It looks like it takes like 10 seconds for each application to be checked, which kind of doesn't seem so great, but it looks like the 10-second limitation can be removed by running each application test inside a user-triggered gesture, like a fake CAPTCHA. Okay, all right, that's interesting. So by like tricking the user into interacting a little bit more, I guess the attacker can lower the bar for how quickly they can spam all these different applications that you might have installed. So yeah, I know like WebRTC is a really common protocol that leaks information just via the browser, but it seems like the custom protocol handler thing would be a really interesting thing for maybe, like Grabify or Canary tokens to take advantage of.
Yeah. But if it takes 10 seconds, then maybe not. But maybe there are other things it could check.
This is true. I mean, we've gone through that there's lots of other different ways you can attempt to fingerprint a browser, either by looking for the size of the browser or, the web RTC leaks can give you things like the keyboard, the time zone, the language, like lots of other, and even on a MacBook Pro, it'll give you the GPU for some reason, like the specific model of GPU. So yeah, it can be like very, very specific in terms of what it can grab in a browser. And it's just really interesting to see that pushed even further. Okay, so this was an interesting vulnerability talking about how you could use a relatively large amount of IP addresses to effectively brute force the login for just about any Instagram account. This is a really good bug bounty related program or related story, and also they won $30,000 as part of the bug bounty program from Facebook. So the kind of the problem here was that if you had enough IP addresses, let's see, 250 requests would go through per IP address before you would be timed out and have to wait before sending any more guesses for an Instagram account. But if you were able to have enough IP addresses, you could just blast all of them at the server in a matter of seconds and avoid this timeout, and basically put in enough guesses that you would be able to brute force pretty much any account. Now, obviously this requires like a botnet or at least like a lot of IP addresses. But it's still enough that Facebook was pretty worried about this and decided that 5,000 IP addresses was still few enough to warrant this being a pretty serious problem. So, brute forcing is still valid if you are sneaky enough to implement it in a way that gets around the kind of safeguards that most companies will have. And Facebook is, relatively good at this. So it's pretty interesting to see that there was still some brute forcing attacks that were still viable against Instagram accounts, even though I will admit 5,000 IP addresses is kind of a lot of IP addresses.
Although we both know someone who has this kind of amount of IP addresses. So it's not impossible to get these.
Yeah. And it looks like also using a cloud service provider like Amazon or Google, it cost about $150 to perform the complete attack of 1 million codes. So, if you're willing to spend $150 to break into someone's Instagram account, it looks like it was possible, but now it hopefully is not, seeing as they've paid out $30,000 to keep this quiet until they fixed it. Cool. And then also, are you excited, Stefan? You've seen your new favorite operating system has emerged. Windows 11 is waiting for you to embrace it.
Yeah, because they said Windows 10 is the last Windows, and you will just be able to update it forever. And yet, here we are, Windows 11. Whoa.
We lie a lot. So here's Windows 11. Also, there's some updated processing requirements. So it needs a 64-bit dual-core processor, 1 gigahertz or faster, 64 gigabytes drive or more, 4 gigabytes of RAM. I mean, it just seems like it needs a little bit more than like any of the older versions of Windows. But that's okay. I'm gonna have to learn how to break this eventually, so might as well get started. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are very excited about Windows 11 coming out, but probably no one as excited as Stefan, I would say.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
So this is another case of, I don't think this is ransomware. I think this is someone is just literally just wiping this data. It looks like WB MyBook Lives were wiped by someone abusing a reset feature that allows a remote wipe of their hard drive, which is pretty terrible. So we can.
This is why I never wanted one of these NAS thingies that you just buy and are meant to be super user friendly. Because I always thought there is some bug in there and you don't really have control over it because you set it up and then it's running, and now this is exactly what happened. This is insane. I mean, what do you do if you have tons of important data on it and this was your backup and now it's gone?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so according to the logs, it just begins a script called factoryrestore.sh, shuts down, and then does a bunch of bad stuff that makes your data no longer retrievable. So currently the recommendation is if you have one of these hard drives, disconnect it from the internet. They don't know what's happening.
But that's the point of those. That's a feature.
Yes. Yeah, so now you have a regular hard drive, which at any moment, if you forget and connect it back to the internet, could destroy itself. So I would say maybe back up your data would be the recommendation. But yeah, they're saying...
But this is your backup.
Yeah, but they're just saying unplug it. So you heard it first from the experts, guys. Unplug it. But yeah, this is... when you have something that's as important as an offline, or not an offline, as a backup for your data, this is explicitly an online one, of course, you do run the risk of somebody exploiting that online functionality to do something really devastating like a factory backup. Now, if you have these, especially exposed online, like so that you can access them remotely, then this makes them even more tempting targets. I don't know if that's what happened here, and I kind of doubt it actually. But the fact that this had some sort of API that probably was abused by someone that figured out a way to do like a sketchy API call that caused a factory reset, yeah, that's not good. I mean, I don't know if this feature was supposed to be like a fail-safe if they ever lost the drive, or if it was something that the manufacturer built into it where they could remotely factory reset these drives. But either way, not a very nice feature. I don't think it was very well received or appreciated.
No.
Oh, so this is a fun one. So there's apparently 129 Dell models that you can man in the middle the remote operating system recovery and firmware update. Isn't that great? No, it's not, by the way. Yeah, so this attack does have some limitations. You do need to actually be on the same network as the person in order to cause this to happen, but it should not be allowed to happen at all. Like with transportation layer security and other types of assurances that you should be downloading legitimate firmware, this really sucks because you should not be able to redirect to an insecure server. But by doing some sneaky backend stuff here, you can basically get the server to accept any wildcard certificate, which means that you can make your own certificate effectively and pass it off as a wildcard of downloads.dell or something. And this will allow you to download an unvalidated image, which could cause very serious problems, or obviously be exploited in order to allow you to backdoor the computer or do something else extremely malicious. So yeah, that's really bad. You can see here, it's kind of explained a little bit. Request is intercepted. You have the man in the middle possession. It's supposed to go to Dell in order to get the firmware update, but instead it goes to the attacker's certificate. The attacker has multiple independent overflows, whatever that means, and sends a bunch of malicious stuff back, which causes the computer to now be backdoored or something terrible. So, I mean, that's really the long and short of it, is like they're failing to authenticate the server that they're downloading the firmware update from properly. And that now opens up people to either being automatically exploited by someone who might be on the same network as them, or by some other exploit chain that relies on this to escalate privileges or get around some other security feature. So, dang, that's not good. So if you have one of the affected systems, then it is, strongly recommended that you update it. And also maybe use like a VPN and only connect to trusted networks when you're doing firmware updates. I think that's something you should probably already do. But yeah, this is even more cause to make sure that you're doing that properly and, and not downloading a malicious firmware update. Okay, so that's most of what I have to go through today. I'm going to switch back to the chat. And if you guys have any questions about anything we've gone over today, about the new hardware and software stuff that Stefan and I are working on for Black Hat, Zam is asking, are we covering the Peloton attack today? I actually have no idea what the Peloton attack is other than it attacking children. But I guess there's another attack on Peloton that is less direct.
Oh yeah, I heard about this, but yeah.
Give me the broad strokes, Stefan.
I don't know. They do this weird fitness devices, and you can hack them.
Okay,
that's all I know.
Okay, all right. So it looks like, according to CNN Business, McAfee rose from the grave to discover a vulnerability that allows hackers to access the Peloton's bike screen and potentially spy on riders using the microphone and camera. Who cares? Can you imagine how ugly that person would look from that perspective? Ugh.
I think the person cares if that.
That's what they would look like.
By the way,
they just look exhausted and sweaty. Maybe you could blackmail them.
By the way, here we are talking about the company McAfee, not the...
I don't think that's clear. It looks like...
I don't think that matters. Yeah, it's the same thing anyway, right?
I have a hard time differentiating them. Perhaps they should rebrand. But I didn't. So I didn't. I don't. I go outside when I want to be physically fit. So like I wasn't aware that they had like the whole like screen integrated into it and like yeah. I mean it is creepy to be able to show them something scary, I guess, on the bike. Maybe that would frighten them. But spying on the camera and microphone, okay, like if this allows you to like have a bug in the room, that's kind of cool, especially maybe if they're on the phone or whatever. So yeah, I can see like remote access to the ability to listen to people's intense, sweaty business calls, or I guess like even if they weren't writing, if you were able to just turn it on and listen to the room. The second one would be more interesting. I would feel like the sound of just like someone biking continuously, breathing heavily, and shouting into the phone would maybe not be as much of a target. But what do I know? Like maybe that's the most valuable target. I don't know. I don't specialize in hacking people who are biking. What would be even it would be funnier if you could make it go fast or something. But okay, all right. Well, you can you can spy on them. You can maybe capture some video of them doing an embarrassing workout, or maybe having an intense business call as they do while biking furiously. Again, like I don't know. Sure.
Honestly, every time a hack like this surfaces or is in the news, I'm not surprised. I think everyone should have a healthy paranoia against all these smart devices. Just as soon as they have cameras, microphone, or network access, like be prepared that everything you do in front of them is probably recorded and sent to someone that you don't want it to be sent to. So, yep, and everything can be exploited sooner or later because companies don't really update their products. That's just not. They don't do it because it wouldn't be profitable. They sell you, especially IoT stuff, has to be cheap. And I tried to get that point across in my hacking smart lamps or smart Wi-Fi lamps. I can't remember the exact title. I tried to get that point across, yet there's still people in the YouTube comments trying to defend their position, being like, oh, but I love my lights. So it's just like not the point.
Yeah, so Stefan found a way to flash the Deauthor firmware onto some smart light bulbs, as well as actually having open source firmware to still control the lights so they're still functional. And what's interesting is sometimes you can even flash these over Wi-Fi, because sometimes the actual ability to update over Wi-Fi will still be enabled in some of these IoT devices. So you can just send it new firmware that's malicious, and if you're having problems with your Wi-Fi, it could be a rogue light bulb that suddenly decided to start attacking your other wireless devices. So this is it sounds silly, but that's actually something that we have done. So yeah.
Yeah, and keep in mind these lamps are super cheap. You find them everywhere.
Yeah.
And you don't think a lamp could be any danger because, and that's what people wrote in the comments as well, defending themselves. It's like, I don't care if someone in China can turn on my light. Yeah, but that's not the point. They now have access to your network.
They have access to your network. They can disconnect any device on your network from the internet anytime they want to, and they can also like potentially,
they can track.
Yeah, like they can track when you're at home. They can see when you're not at home. They can sell that data to anyone. You don't know. Maybe they're selling it to the NSA. Maybe you did something wrong that you don't know about. Who knows? The point is, like, you don't want a malicious light bulb working against your interest in your own home. It's unnecessary. I'm sure you have other things to worry about than like an evil light bulb.
The best thing about this is these cheap lamps come with a firmware that's probably doing all that data tracking by default. There's a great talk from, I think 35C3. I also mentioned that in my video. That, yeah, if you use the app that comes with these cheap lamps, they all use the same app. Sometimes they are rebranded, but it's the same app and it's the same company in the background. And that company also manufactures these lamps as OEMs. And they don't make money with the hardware. They make money with your data because everything goes through their Chinese servers. And that's how they finance themselves. And by the way, this company, and it's just so funny, that company approached me. Like, I made a video about how stupid and dangerous their products are. This company approached me and asked me if I want to join their like social media influencer program. Like, what?
They're just like, wow, you mentioning our lamps was great. You want to join us? You're like, no, I don't like them. They're
I
like,
despise
yeah,
them.
great. You talk about them. That's good enough for us. Come on, join our social media influence. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, one thing Zam mentioned that I guess Mr. McAfee was Neil Breen's ultimate idol. Neil Breen, that was the other guy that I used before. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to have to go back to using Neil Breen now as my official OSINT investigation guy. Do you know who that is, Stefan?
No.
You will soon, because he's all
Yes,
I've got
okay.
now.
Okay.
Yeah, and also thank you, Zam, for restraining yourself for the comments on Mr. McAfee. I understand pretty much all of them would be inappropriate for this forum. But yeah, I think that's just about all the time we have for today. If you had a question about anything that we did on the show today, make sure to drop it on the YouTube channel at Security Forward. That's youtube.com/securityfwd, or you can go to just hackingwithfriends.com and you will see this episode up there. You can ask questions on it. We will answer it during our Wednesday live session. And if you want to see some more great Varonis content, you can also check out our threat update, where our sometimes co-host Killian goes through all the threats that real companies are up against and how they are defending against them. And this, I think it's actually been taking off a lot too. So make sure to check that out. Hopefully we'll have Stefan again maybe next week, perhaps, to talk more about what we're working on with the Deauthor and other projects. And yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.